faster and more intense. That was his main direction. He just wanted us to speed through it.
George is notorious for saying, after a take, do it again, faster, more intensity. He certainly said to me, was, terrific, Tony, can you do it again faster? But that's it, I didn't get more intensity. I didn't think 3PO with more intensity would be bearable, do you?
Hello and welcome to Faster and More Intense number 7, or you might have noticed Faster and More Intense Videocast number 1. I don't know, we still haven't figured out what we're going to call it yet, but anyways, I'm your host, Shiloh Camrath, and with me is my co-host, George Costel.
Hello, everyone.
You always have a new voice every time, don't you, George?
Oh, you know me, I like to mix it up a little bit.
You may or may not be watching this in video format, but if you are, you will be seeing something on your screen other than just nothing. So this is, we're going to try to switch over to this. There'll still be an option to watch it or listen to it, rather, in audio. But this way, when we are, discussing something that is visual, like last week we did or week before that, I'm not sure. Whatever, we did the Force Awakens visual guide. And we had a pretty good discussion on that, but it might have been lacking for some people who were not staring at the visual guide at the same time. So this will allow us, when we're talking about a particular scene, or, say, for instance, like today, talking about comics, when we mention a particular splash panel or something, you will be able to see it as well.
Yeah, so should be a fun and exciting new format. And then hopefully in the future we'll actually be able to do segments that really take advantage of it, talking about, say, art or collectibles, where you really need to actually see what we're talking about for us to actually be worthwhile. So should be a party and a half.
Alright, and so today we've got a new Rebels episode, which was Legends of Lasat, or Legends of Lasan. I've heard it said either way. I'm not even sure what the actual correct pronunciation is.
I think it's been listed online either way too. So
yeah.
We'll figure that out before we get to that segment.
Yeah, okay. And then also we've got a new comic, the exciting new Anakin and Obi-Wan series.
Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Did I do it again?
You did. Everyone always does, and I can't blame them, because I have to catch myself every time. But it is, in fact, Obi-Wan and Anakin.
I'm just trying to use good grammar. I'm listing it alphabetically.
That's okay. We forgive you.
Yeah. And also, remember last week that super secret segment we promised you? We're not doing it.
No, but, I mean, we're giving you video now, so I think that's a pretty fair trade-off, you ingrates.
George, you're going to scare them all away. Don't be so mean. Alrighty. Well, before we hop into that, I suppose, is there any news we got this week?
A pretty decent bit this week, really. One of the standout bits was the cover reveal and summary of the new Claudia Gray book, New Republic Bloodlines.
Looks so good.
It does. And we'll actually be showing you the cover right now, which is so exciting.
Oh, I forgot about that. We are. Yes, we can all... Oh, yes, wonderful cover.
But, so, obviously, you're looking at it now, and Leia's on it. The book is about Leia. It sounds like it's going to be really kind of delving into the formation of the Resistance and her disillusionment with the New Republic. Vader's on the cover. He'll obviously, his shadow will loom over the book. The excerpt mentioned Corsella, who we mentioned in the Visual Dictionary cast, shows up in the novelization, shows up briefly in the movie. She had a scene cut. So that's pretty cool. She'll be fleshing her out. So that'll be fun, I think. But it sounds like a really good book. Claudia Gray's fantastic, obviously.
Oh, yeah. This almost seems, how, like, Lost Stars basically took the excitement that Aftermath was? This kind of almost seems like it's going to take the excitement that the second Aftermath book is going to have.
Yeah, we'll see. I have actually relatively high hopes for the second Aftermath book, but this sounds like it will be pretty fantastic. And letting Claudia Gray really play with one of the pre-existing characters of the franchise should be a pretty exciting development.
I agree.
Then another big announcement this week. The announcement of the Lego Star Wars Force Awakens video game. Essentially just directly ripping off the first trailer for the Force Awakens. I think the game looks pretty fun, honestly.
Yeah, the others were pretty fun. I didn't actually care for the Clone Wars one that came out.
Yeah, I didn't play too much of that one.
Yeah,
I played mostly the movies.
Yeah, I liked the other one. The other one was actually really good. And I even played the first one that they had.
Oh yeah, I've been with the franchise since the beginning.
Yeah.
I think obviously they're meant for a little bit of a younger crowd, but I mean there's enough humor there for the older gamer, and if you want something that's light, easy to pick up, not going to stress you out, Lego Star Wars probably a decent game for you to do that with. So just kick back, relax. Obviously, we haven't seen any gameplay yet, but I mean, if we should expect pretty certain things out of the gameplay by this point. So we'll see. Here's hoping they bring in some characters from like the prequel trilogy and original trilogy. They're known for having just ridiculously large character rosters. So that'd be kind of fun. Here's fingers crossed for that.
As well as having ridiculous amounts of money near endgame when you get the 20 times bonuses on the studs that you pick up. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be fun. IGN this week released an interview with the current editor of the Star Wars comics over at Marvel. Very good interview, I thought. No huge announcements other than saying, there are going to be more miniseries coming. The editor is Jordan D. White, by the way. So it's a nice look back at the first year of Star Wars comics. He talks about his favorites, ongoing and miniseries. So we'll throw a link to that in the show notes. It's worth a read. It's pretty quick.
Wait, George. Why would we put a link in the show notes when we can just put a link on the screen?
Well, you can't click the screen and go, or could you if we do YouTube? We'll have to play with this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, either way, we'll have a link for you. So
has it really only been a year?
Yeah, they started slightly over a year now, like 13 months. Fine, sue me. But they started back in January. Yeah.
Man, it seemed we have gotten so much in this last year.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they have maintained a pretty high level of output. There's no doubt about that. So hey, pretty exciting, pretty fun. Go take a look at that. The last big announcement I have would probably be, and this isn't even a huge announcement, but on the collectibles front, Hot Toys announced the first figure in their video game Masterpiece series. It's also the first, to my knowledge, high-end collectible based off the new Battlefront game, and that would be the Shock Trooper figure they just announced.
Yeah.
What was that, Shiloh?
Oh, I just agreed. Yeah, that's a cool character.
Yeah, definitely. It's amusing because I don't think they've actually done a clone Shock Trooper yet. Hot Toys. I know Sideshow has a while ago. But I mean that's pretty cool. I think that we're actually seeing some high end stuff from Battlefront. Shock Trooper, like you said, really cool design. Hasbro was smart enough to make a Black Series figure of it. And then they were dumb enough to make it a Walmart exclusive so people wouldn't actually be able to find it. And this looks even better than that. They actually bothered giving him, like, the backpack. Hasbro didn't. So he's just got a lot of accessories. Looks really cool. Not cheap. It's $220.
Oh, wow. How big is this thing?
It's about a foot tall. Hot Toys, you're paying for quality because these really hard to match the quality of a Hot Toys figure. You know, Sideshow and them both do great work. Yeah, you'll actually appreciate this. I live on campus at Fordham University, and the residence halls, each floor has a different theme, and a few floors have a Star Wars theme. And each room then gets a different character to like be on their door, and then every name tag has like a little thing referencing the character. So it's all well and good, pretty cute. And most of them are using movie stills, but at least 2 of the doors on that floor actually use Hot Toys figures for their pictures.
Oh, cool.
The First Order Stormtrooper, if you look at it, you might not be able to tell that it's not actually a movie still. I think the only reason I noticed was because I collect and I picked up. This is one of the promo shots for that, isn't it?
Wow, so when you put them up against a background, I mean, they could literally be a movie still? It's that quality?
Yeah. And obviously we'll be showing you some of these stills in the video now.
Oh, that's true.
So I guess you can decide for yourself.
It's going to take some getting used to.
Yeah. But I would say that the quality is there, and 220 is roughly par for course for Hot Toys. I'm looking on Sideshow now, and stuff like, say, their TIE Pilot is only 200, but then like their First Order Heavy Gunner figure is 220. They had one that was 235, the Flame Trooper. So it's not gouging you, relatively speaking, just because it's a video game or more relatively exclusive. So, if you have the money to spend, if you want to start collecting the line, it's a fair price, relatively speaking, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, what I hope they really make is the Rebel Princess Leia bodyguard figure from Battlefront. Not only do I think that that's actually a better in-game character than the Shock Trooper, but also it's really got a cool design, how it's kind of half Rebel Fleet Trooper, half Endor Commando kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, my advice would be don't get your hopes up, because Hot Toys, like Sideshow, knows that what people really, really like are, clones and stormtroopers. And boy, oh boy, Hot Toys has really taken the lead with doing figures from The Force Awakens. And obviously they have like a Rey coming, they have a Finn coming. But before either of those were announced, you had Kylo Ren. But before Rey and Finn, you had like Phasma, you had the First Order Stormtrooper, you had a First Order Stormtrooper Commander with a Paladin, you had the First Order Heavy Stormtrooper. You have some like Jakku Stormtroopers, which are basically just Stormtroopers with the vest but without the big gun. You have a First Order Squad Leader, which is like the Commander but with a different Paladin. You got your Heavy Gunner, you got the TIE Pilot, you have Phasma.
Was there even that many in the movie? Wow.
Oh yeah, that's to their credit. Everything they've released is actually in the movie, and it's a credit to J.J. Abrams that he was smart enough to introduce all these freaking variants.
He probably got a lot of help from the marketing team at Lucasfilm.
Oh, I'm sure.
Make sure. Can't you throw in one small variant in the background there? Come on.
Well, think about it. Like the Flame Trooper, one shot in the movie, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And then because it is a Trooper variant, you have the Disney Elite Series figure, you have the Black Series figure, and now you have the Hot Toys figure. All from essentially like 2 seconds of footage.
Well, I think it'd be hilarious if they had a figure, a normal Stormtrooper, and then they had the same exact model, but on the base it said, Traitor or FN, whatever his name was.
I'm telling you, it's a matter of time before they do an FN 2187 figure, because all it is a head swap and a repaint for the helmet.
Wait, do you even need a head swap though?
Well, I think if they're going to do FN 2187, they'll let you, take the helmet off and put on Finn's head if you want. And that's the thing, they already have the head from the actual Finn figure. So it would be a pretty simple retool for them, and I bet we'll see it at some point. Hasbro's already done it in the Black Series and the 3/3/4 line. They have an FN 2187 figure, removable helmet, blood smears, all that. So it's coming.
All right.
But I think that's enough collectibles talk for now.
Well, was there anything else noteworthy that hit this week? I can't really think
Um,
of anything.
yeah, I can't either.
Yeah. Well,
So I guess we should just dive into our segments then, no?
yeah. Wait, yes. No. Yes.
Are you sure?
No.
Fighting alongside soldiers isn't what I signed up for.
But you signed up for Rebels Ramble from Faster and More Intense.
All right. So today we're going to be discussing the Legends of Lasan or Legends of Lasat.
It's Legends of the Lasat. We figured
Oh,
it
we
out.
did.
We
Okay.
said we would, and we did.
Yeah, you're right. We
Lasat.
did promise we would. Okay. Well, good. I'm glad somebody's on top of that. But it was a very interesting episode, I think. We haven't had much like it, I would say.
No, I'd agree. And I liked it honestly. I thought it kind of continued the hot streak that started with Protector of Concord Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think it gave us some really, really, really much needed background for Zeb.
Yeah.
Because I think the common consensus was he and Sabine were much more of a blank slate than Ezra, Hera, or Kanan. And Sabine, we finally started to get some stuff for last week. Now we're finally getting some more stuff for Zeb. And I thought it was effective too, honestly.
Yeah.
Um,
And I gotta say, I'm actually almost more interested in what they're gonna do with Zeb next than in what they're gonna do with Sabine.
Yeah. Well, because seriously, I think this was a big arc for Zeb. Character wise, you have him go from thinking he's the last one to realizing he's one of a few, to realizing he's one of many. He finally opens himself up to the spiritual side of his culture, which I thought was really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Because he certainly seemed like the type who wouldn't put too much stock in Jedi business or prophecies, what have you. But to see that the rest of the culture did put such stock in it, and rightfully so, as it turned out, I thought that was something.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. When you go into their kind of their history, they left their planet. I'm guessing some of them just developed technology, flew away from their planet. It seems like the new the new planet that they had was spawning more Zeb-like people who, they were saying believed in military force, didn't really care much about the ways of the old.
Yeah.
So that, and so to where they, very few of them were left, and they kind of started this, when everything went south, they kind of started looking back to the religions of their ancestors kind of thing, just similar to say the ghost dance for the Native Americans and stuff. When their culture starts to, get destroyed, they fall back on, believing in, their ancestors and stuff, and it's kind of what happened here, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty fair. And I think, it makes sense that Zeb, they talk about this in Rebels Recon, and I think that's fair. Zeb had been probably the most militaristic of the Ghost crew.
Mm-hmm.
And, by learning he's a captain in the Honor Guard, we kind of see why that was the case. And, I also think that him being, captain of the Honor Guard would suggest, a pretty decent reason for why he might not be so hung up on the, spiritual aspects of the culture.
Yeah. Which, interesting, I like the way that they put it in. Interesting about Zeb's bow rifle and the connection to that, and it was definitely really interesting. I think it was definitely a break with, whereas Protector of Concord Dawn, I think, seemed like your classic Rebels episode, with cool Mandos and a little bit of character developments for Sabine. I think this seemed a little more breaking the mold of what your Rebels episode is like, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Certainly in that regard. The stuff it's almost closest to is like the spiritual stuff, say in like the temple that Ezra had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Is the closest analog I can think of. Which again I think kind of speaks nicely to again another thing they talk about in Rebels Recon, the idea that there are a bunch of cultures around the Jedi that not necessarily worship the Force, but have a spiritual connection to it. Um, and that the Jedi and Sith aren't like the only binary that it exists on.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, the little saw with the Ashla. Um, you have the Night Sisters using the Force, but regarding it more as magic than anything else. I think are probably that's probably the biggest example in the new canon right now.
Yeah, you also have the Bardata,
Mm-hmm.
who they I guess used the Force too. I don't know if they called it the Force or not, but it was kind of their, they tapped into it. So yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, not every culture is going to is going to learn about the Force in the same way or apply. The Jedi were probably the most scientific in their thinking about the Force because they were around for the longest and they had time to study it. And whereas the Sith
Mm-hmm.
almost treat it as like a, Sith treat it kind of like a companion, or as some form of raw power. I think they treat it probably more spiritually than the Jedi do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you can make an argument either way, but I think that's a fair point. Um, and it's funny just mentioning the Ashla. I would feel remiss if I didn't mention this, but the idea of the Ashla doesn't originate with Rebels. Actually, um, the term Ashla um, was actually goes back to like the light side of the Force in the EU, and I believe it comes from like the original Star Wars script. It was referred to as the Ashla, and I could be wrong. Um, but then going from there, it actually was brought into the EU after showing up in the script in like the Dawn of the Jedi comics. I think was the first one to use the term, um, where it was one of the moons of Tython, which was like the original Jedi homeworld.
Hmm.
Um, and and then the other moon was Bogdan, and each one symbolized one side of the Force.
Hmm.
Um, or Bogon, I guess the other one was. And so, you know, the idea that the Ashla is now being used as the term for the Force by this new race, um, I think is pretty darn cool. It was a great idea to bring it into the canon. Um, it was probably a very good way to do it. And I suppose I should also mention that Ashla is also the name of one of the younglings from Attack of the Clones. Um,
Hmm.
I'm assuming they just brought that in just as a little nod before they bothered to bring it in as a whole concept for the
Yeah.
Force.
Well, I mean, with
Um,
100 trillion people in the galaxy, I think that the same name is probably going to be used twice on at least one person. So,
yeah, you'd think so.
yeah,
I don't have an issue with it. It's pretty fun. So
yeah.
hey, there you
But
go.
throwing everything else out, all this mysticism and Zeb's background and all this unimportant stuff. Let's get down to the
Mm-hmm.
really important part of this episode.
Hondo.
Hondo. Uh,
This was this was a good episode for Hondo.
yeah, I think I liked him better in this episode than the last one.
I agree. Um, but I don't want to disparage the last one too much because I think that a lot of the reason I liked Hondo more was that he felt more integrated with the Ghost Crew. He felt more at home here than he did in the first episode.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of the reason why he worked so well here was because of the setup that had been done previously.
Yeah.
Um, like if this was Hondo's first episode, I don't think it would have worked. Um,
Hmm. Does anyone else feel really sad that Hondo did not get his credits in the end? I mean, I really hoped he would get away with his credits. I mean,
it would have been nice, but I mean, I liked he was able to show up at the end. He had presence throughout the episode and not just the beginning. It was classic Hondo. Him playing both sides, obviously favoring one of the dogs in the fight, but still willing to save his own skin above anyone else, and certainly willing to make a credit off of either one.
Preferably both.
Oh, exactly. So it was great seeing him again. It was a very good episode for him. I thought he was quite funny. Seeing him play both sides was great, and I'm very pleased with how he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was fun. Callus made another appearance in this episode. I really hope that he gets better treatment in the next one, which is the next one where him and Zeb have to team up.
It's not. I don't think it's next episode, but I know it's coming. I could be wrong though. But that said, I did think this was Callus's worst episode. Not by a long
No,
shot.
it definitely wasn't his worst.
I think like especially compared to like when they were fleeing Gorel, and like I don't know, he did not come across very good there. But here, I think he had like legitimate reason to not pursue the rebels. There's no way he could have actually anticipated them somehow surviving, their journey in there. It's again, I don't like seeing him lose all the time, but at least here when he's losing, it's an understandable loss that doesn't make him look incompetent.
Yeah.
It just makes the rebels look lucky more than anything else, I think.
But who it does make look strange is Admiral Constantine. Why is the dude with like 100 little squares on his shirt commanding a tiny little cruiser out in unknown space, when before we've seen him literally leading an armada of like 4 Star Destroyers?
I'm just wondering if he just like follows Callus around at this point.
Yeah. I'm not sure. He's just playing his deck officer now. Yeah.
Yeah, like honestly, I don't get me wrong, I completely understand where you're coming from. I thought that was kind of weird too. Well, here's the thing. Apparently, they're not willing to give any Imperial officers other than like Callus and Constantine and what's his face from the Interdictor episode.
Yeah.
They're not willing to actually give them a facial model. They'll just throw the head on them and obscure their eyes. So like in that sense, they I guess needed Constantine there if you're going to have an Imperial officer for Callus to play off.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, they did the same thing in the Clone Wars, but at least in the Clone Wars it was understandable. They're all the same face,
Yeah.
Yeah. And
even then, at least they'd be changing up, like, Mace Windu would have his own, like, non-clone admiral.
Yeah.
Skywalker had his own. They at least mixed it up a little bit, but what are you going to do, I guess?
Yeah, not much, I suppose. But
it'd be nice to see a little more variety, but that's neither here nor there.
But obviously, the Imperial officers and their work schedules was not the main focus of this episode, I guess. No. Yeah, it was really... I liked seeing it. The only thing I was wondering is, obviously there was some kind of... Either option A, Zeb's bow rifle has some kind of force power to where it can connect with the Force, or Zeb has a connection with the Force that he can use. Because, either the bow rifle or Zeb was guiding them through the nebula, and Zeb, I don't think, had a knowledge of the nebula before. So either he was being guided by the Force, or the bow rifle was imbued with the Force somehow.
I got to imagine bow rifle. I don't think it's Zeb. I'd be kind of annoyed if it was Zeb.
I would too.
Unless they go the route that it's like the whole species has a natural minor affinity, which wouldn't be abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think.
It wouldn't be bad. I mean, I think the Bardata is. I think they were the same way. I think they all had a, and I mean they even mention it several times in the Clone Wars how all beings, have some amount of force, affinity in them.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like say, Mace Windu's planet in the Harun Kal, everyone on that planet has a pretty decent sensitivity to the Force. They just, don't necessarily recognize it as such. And so, I think maybe that's the route they go. I don't think they need to. I think if you say the bow rifle had it, that's enough. I thought it was kind of fun, though. The first scene, it was essentially almost, I thought, ripping off of, like, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
when Zeb takes his rifle to like the crystal, it's like straight up like the map room scene from Raiders of the
And I
Lost
think
Ark.
it was probably
and
meant
I know
to
issues
be
with that. Because they were making a freaking map, I would certainly imagine. But I thought that was a lot of fun. It's a fun reference. And then I thought, in a few different regards, that visually, I thought this was a beautiful episode.
Oh, yeah.
Like when they got to the nebula, I thought that was unlike anything they'd ever done.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the music in this episode, I thought very good.
Yeah.
Especially in that scene.
It definitely reminded me of some of the bigger things that went on in Clone Wars when they, especially in the episodes where they brought in live bands and recorded that. I mean, it was definitely quite well done.
Yeah, I thought it was very well done. I think the musical cue is available online. So I just thought really well done. Very nice moment. And that whole sequence I thought was pretty well done, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something I really appreciated was, so they take off into wild space or whatever. And Star Wars and the books and stuff have always the media and the books have kind of converged or differed on this, whereas, if you're in the Clone Wars or you're in the movies and you need to jump somewhere, you just jump there and done, super easy. Whereas in the books and stuff, they explain it a little more, it's difficult, you have to jump from navigational beacon to navigational beacon and this and that, and so I would really appreciate it.
Well,
how...
it's not... I was going to say, I don't think it's always navigational beacons.
Yeah.
It's definitely, like, established hyperspace
Yeah, I mean,
routes.
jumping into wild space is a serious proposition, So
yes.
I was really glad that they didn't just jump from here to their destination. Haha, we just jumped through wild space. They, came up upon something unexpected and, had to get out of hyperspace real quick. I really liked that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I mean, I think, they kind of point to it in the movies where Han's is like, we need to fire up the nav computer because it needs to calculate the route so we don't fly into a star. So they pay it lip service, but it's nice to see it actually in action, like, oh, we would have flown into something that would have killed us. It is good that we were pulled out of hyperspace. So I thought that was fun. So, yeah, I mean, again, I think this was a solid episode.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'd put it up there quite on the level of enjoyment I had from Protector of Concord Dawn, but I would probably liked it more than Leia's episode. I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say the second half of the season is very, very slowly gaining momentum. So hopefully by the end of the season we'll be doing pretty good.
Yeah, I mean we had that great trailer.
Oh yeah. And we haven't seen much of it yet. So.
No, I don't think we have. And I think what we've gotten has been pretty good. Certainly I think it's better than the worst of the first half of the season. Mm-hmm. Nothing quite as bad as like the first Sabine episode we got. And I would say probably on average I would say probably been stronger or as strong as the first half of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So hey, I think we're in a pretty good place here.
All right. Any last comments, or forever hold your peace, kind of thing?
Yeah. I guess just that Zeb still might be my least favorite member of the Ghost Crew, but I think this did a lot of work to make him more likable.
Wait, you like Chopper better than you do Zeb?
I don't even count Chopper as part of the crew.
Okay, cool. All right,
humanoid
awesome.
creatures. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Sabine Samando, Hera, Kanan, and even Ezra have gotten more development than Zeb. So Zeb just was kind of always lower on the totem pole. But I think this was a good episode for Zeb.
Yeah.
I think it was an episode that was needed too.
Yeah. Well, this episode may have been okay or even good, but the next thing we're going to be discussing is downright amazing. And next up, we're going to be talking about the comic that came out this week, and that would be, wait for it, Obi-Wan and Anakin, number 2.
Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff.
But I've never seen anything as strange as galactic graphics from Faster and More Intense.
So, as Shiloh mentioned, we're talking about the excellent Obi-Wan and Anakin issue 2, part 2, what have you. And I'm with him. I thought this was a spectacular issue. One of probably the best issues I think that Marvel's put out under the Star Wars legacy.
I'll even go further than that. I will say the best.
I'm not going to argue. I think that's a legitimate case to be made. Without thinking too much of it, I couldn't really place any issue higher than this. So obviously we've both spoken about our love for it. What were some of your favorite elements of this, Shiloh?
Ugh, where to begin? How about the beginning? Well, favorite elements, starting with, I guess, the design. The planet looks really cool. Lots of interesting colors. Neat new design. The people are interesting. Their weapons, their clothing is cool. The airship thing is really interesting. The planet itself, you got all this lore that is. It looks like, getting later on, we've got some sort of zombie race, I guess. We've got creepy creatures. We've got a gas that came up from the Earth that killed a bunch of people or turned it into wasteland. You've got two different sides fighting over something that happened 100 years ago. They fought to the extent where they can't even get off the planet now. You've got some mysterious person sending out a distress call on technology that's not even supposed to be on that planet. Then you've got Obi-Wan and Anakin. You've got their relationship. You got Anakin being a really cool youngster in just the way that they're, you finally see a friendship between them. You've got our heroes being, just the incredibly strong, people coming from far off and the interaction between them and the planet. Then you cut back to Coruscant and you've got Anakin in his stages of training. And you got in the beginning of Anakin and Palpatine's relationship. Palpatine shows him what the underworld of Coruscant looks like, and you can see how he's starting to imbue him with the might makes right and the ends justify the means attitude. And then you hop back to back to the planet in a very well done transition, and you're back to the story, which is just getting more interesting, and even adding a little mystery.
Yeah. No, I mean,
it's really good.
It's like, I think you've hit basically all the major points. Again, I think you're right. The lore of the planet they're on is, they're not spending too much time on. It's happening mostly in passing, but it's all been really interesting, I think. Yeah. You've got a pretty well-defined conflict. Going back to the point where they each blame the other. No one really knows who started it. And now, of course, they're being forced to team up to survive, which is fun. Like you said, you get to see Obi-Wan being a badass. You get to see Anakin being a badass. You can see the trust they have in each other, which I think is, again, something you noted, and I think is really important to show.
Yeah.
Because it's something you don't necessarily see in the movies. Anakin pays lip service to, Obi-Wan's great. But, again, in the movies, he's pretty angry at him all the time.
Yeah.
So, that's good.
Yeah, even in Clone Wars, they kind of have this conflict going.
And, I mean, clearly, they're not on the best of terms here. Because we know, going back to issue 1, that Anakin had asked to leave the Order. Which I assume is what the flashbacks are leading to. But, we need to see how he gets there. So there's a few mysteries going on, really. So that's fun. And again, I think, something that we've each touched on, the action in this issue is great. And there's a few different real action scenes. I think obviously it's fun seeing both of them be really cool. But I think perhaps, the most important one is when Obi-Wan is just like, these are, minor creatures, they're not intelligent, we're just in their way.
Yeah.
Try to just have them go by us. And Anakin really does try, but he does not have any degree of success.
No, but I like that he tries. And especially it cuts back to the scene of the temple where he's like, Master, I'm going to be here all day until I master this. and that was really good. I mean, it shows that, Anakin was not fated to kill everyone, since his birth. I mean, he was a legitimately, nice kid who really wanted to do best. And I really liked that, and it might even be showing a little more of how, maybe Anakin was okay to start with, and maybe, it was Palpatine who really corrupted him. Not to say Anakin's not to blame for anything he did, but even more so than before, he may become more of a tragic character.
No, I agree. Anakin, I think, genuinely, loved the idea of him being a Jedi. I think he, you get this in The Phantom Menace, that, he was just, overwhelmed by the opportunity to, become something bigger than himself. Just, he's enthusiastic, in that flashback about trying to be the best that he can be. And in the first issue, he's enthusiastic, practicing his lightsaber skills. So it makes it all the more surprising that he threatened to quit the Order. And so I'm really curious to see, obviously, how that plays out. But I guess also in that flashback, you see Palpatine going down to the underlevels in disguise. And I'm assuming that when we flash back next issue, it'll be like the direct follow-up of where they are here. Because they actually bothered to introduce where they went. They say it is Club Kassakar. There's a hut, there's Twi'leks, there's Biff, booths.
There's even a Gungan, I think.
Yeah, there's a Gungan on the street going in, at least. I see a Toydarian there.
Oh, yeah.
So, I guess, Endgame would be, I'm excited to see where the story is going, both in the flashbacks and in the present time, which is really kind of impressive.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that this artist did a great job of capturing,
Yes.
Coruscant. And what's really interesting is that whatever Palpatine is going to do in here, I don't think that he is going to be making a lot of friends. And whatever he does, Anakin does not share any of it with Obi-Wan or the Jedi Order. If Palpatine comes in and slaughters everyone, which I'm not sure he's going to do that, even say he does, Anakin doesn't say anything of it to the Jedi Order.
No, of course not.
So that is something interesting right here, that Palpatine is going to do something to where, he's something that Anakin sees, he is never going to share it with his superiors. This one person that he's met like twice, automatically he trusts him enough not to tell the people of the Jedi Order what happened, which is a really interesting thing all in itself.
I mean, obviously, Palpatine says he goes down there to help people. I would be very surprised if Palpatine reveals any sort of like physical prowess on his part. But you're right. I'm very curious to see what Palpatine's game down there is. What his plan is, what he's going to do. And so again, I just think it's an exciting prospect to see where that goes. And at the same time, the main issue leaves us on a cliffhanger, which you mentioned. So that should be really cool. I want to see how they wind up taking out that airship, actually causing problems for them. But it's just a really good issue.
Yeah, yeah, and it was interesting. One of the things that they said, how, or Obi-Wan says near the end of the issue, is that ever since we talked about the reason why we came here, both of those who were trying to kill each other earlier, have now been acting like the best of friends. So there is that kind of mystery, not just the action of these interesting people or people-like creatures, but actually kind of maybe figuring out why. I mean, what is the reason that they were drawn to this planet?
Oh, exactly. I mean, it's again, that whole page I think is interesting, because it's them talking about why they suddenly changed their minds, and thought, oh, if they got something from off-world, then let's help out, let's work together. Anakin connecting like the open and the closed to the Jedi and the Sith, I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because Obi-Wan describes them as people, rarely have he seen two people more devoted to hating each other than Grecker and Mother Pran, the open and the closed people. And I thought it was interesting that Anakin connected them to the Jedi and the Sith. Because, Obi-Wan says hate, and the Jedi aren't really supposed to hate. But in pretty much every measurable regard, you could argue that they hate the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or at least hate the ideals of the
yeah.
Sith. And hating an ideal is still
exactly.
Hate.
So, I think Anakin actually makes a pretty interesting point here, in that, the relationship with the Sith is, one where the Sith need to be destroyed, which is, almost in a way un-Jedi-like. And it's kind of interesting that Anakin, coming so late to the Order, probably only being a member for, 3-4 years at this point, he's the one who...
maybe slightly longer. Well, no, but he's probably, 10 in Phantom Menace?
It might be 9, so maybe it's closer to Attack of the Clones than Phantom Menace. But still, he's been with the Order for not too long. So I think to have him be the one to, kind of note, these two people who hate each other are kind of just the same as the Jedi and Sith is a pretty interesting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because she says something early on, one that I forget her name, but the lady of the Open, she says how the Open stands for order on the planet or something like that, and also the guy makes the accusation that the Open brought up the mist, which not even sure what that is yet, to destroy the planet or something like that. So that maybe kind of thinks, heralds to maybe the Open, were the ones that, more similar to the Sith, as then they stood for order and, and they brought up the mist, say they were, losing some kind of conflict, they brought up the mist and destroyed the world rather than lose it. That's all speculation now, but interesting to think of. And even what the mist is exactly. I don't know, did they say it was some kind of electromagnetic thing in the beginning when the ship crashed, or?
They mentioned an electromagnetic thing, but I don't think they get too far into it. I don't think we really know what the mist are, but I think you make a good point. Because the line is the Open are the only ones preventing this planet from calling into complete chaos. And I mean, I think we kind of noted that they're not far enough gone to completely forget that they once had the technology to call off world, and they recognize that they essentially are responsible for its destruction. But I think they are far enough gone to blame, to have kind of forgotten why they're fighting. It certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's just an interesting dichotomy they have set up. So I'm excited to see greater exploration of that.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like nothing runs on electricity on this planet, which could have to be with the electromagnetic thing. Because it looks like all their airships, are just mechanical. It doesn't look like they have any electronic stuff in them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I am curious to see where this ends up. Well, I'd like that they. I mean, and you can tell, again, just going back to that, they call their blasters bangers, I think.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming I don't know if we've actually seen. I'm assuming they're still blasters, and not slug throwers, but I could be wrong.
Are you sure? I was more to the thought that they were slug throwers.
Either way, I think it works. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they do mention a sea, so I wonder if part of this planet is actually still, not highlands, or high mountains. Maybe a piece of this planet is still, just maybe it's just fertile plains or something.
I kind of assumed that it actually related to the mist. Because they talk about they could travel overland to get there, They said they would need the airship to cross it, I think. Something like that. So I assumed that maybe it related more to the mists, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, clearly they say across the Celadon Sea it's safe there, so I think you're right. I don't think it's all highlands. But, at the same time, I'm not sure it's an actual ocean.
Yeah. So, but either way, it'll be very interesting to find out.
Yes, I agree. We haven't, honestly, I think, we kind of had our big moments at the beginning where we just ran through everything we liked about the issue, which I kind of feel has really kind of drained us of conversation topics. But,
yeah.
Again, we're not lying when we say this is a great issue. One of the things that we had...
And remember, because they can actually see it for themselves a little too.
And I guess since you can see it for yourselves, I should mention that I think personally the art in this issue is fantastic. Shiloh, you mentioned he did Coruscant really well. He does everything really well. I think the only thing I don't love are some of his faces. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and he noted this, and I kind of agree. That if he does a face head on, it looks fine, but his side profiles look a little wonky. And I think that's kind of a fair statement. I do think he's probably better with environments than with people, but it's still really, really beautiful art. So I really can't complain too much.
Yeah, it definitely reminds me of Shattered Empire as far as the art goes.
Which makes sense because it is the same artist. So.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, yeah. But so, not much to say other than if you haven't got any Marvel comic up until now, go out and get this series because it is.
Yeah, you're only an issue behind. They just did a second printing of the first issue, so you can just buy that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. This is the series to read right now. So go buy it. You fools.
Darth Vader and Star Wars would take a lot of work to get into. Not to mention a lot of money.
Yeah.
And if you're not a big comic person, this is definitely the most bang for your buck.
Definitely. All right. Well, I think I think we've said what we want to say. Again, great issue. Go buy it. Coming up next, we'll be talking about what's going to be happening next week. So stick around.
Chewie, get us out of here!
All right, well, that is going to do it for us today on Faster and More Intense 7 or Faster and More Intense Videocast number 1. Whichever way you want to count it is fine with me. Yeah. So next week, we're going to be talking, obviously, about the next Rebels episode, which is...
I believe it's called The Call, and it looks like it's going to have space whales.
Yes, The Call, space whales.
Which, as silly as that may sound, is not the general idea of space whales. Actually goes back to the really old EU. The Lando Calrissian novels actually had roughly space whales.
Well, I think we also got something similar to space whales in Clone Wars in the Malevolence arc, first season.
That's true, actually. We did. So
those
space
weren't
whales,
quite
not
space
a new
whales, but yeah.
But hey, it should be kind of fun. We'll see how that all turns out. Also next week is comics. I believe it's Darth Vader 16, I think is next.
Whichever one's the next one, I don't know.
And that will actually be taking us to the planet we first visited in the Darth Vader annual, Shu-Torun. So that should be pretty darn cool, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the stronger comics that Darth Vader has been in so far, so it's really good. I liked it.
Yeah. So it will be the start of the Shu-Torun War, the third story arc of Darth Vader. So that will be a party and a half, no doubt. Then also next week, we'll be having a discussion about how some of the new canon expanded universe stuff, so, like the books, the comics, Rebels, how that's coloring our perception of the actual movies. So that should be a pretty interesting talk. We'll have some company over. It'll be a delightful time. We'll set out some cakes, and it'll just be a blast.
No one told me about that. I didn't
Well,
realize
we
that.
wanted to keep it on the DL. If people aren't expecting too much cake, we don't have to buy as much.
The DL-44?
Sure.
That was a pretty lame joke.
That's okay.
However, the discussion will not be. Should be pretty cool because we have gotten just an incredible amount of information in the new canon with the comics and Rebels and the novels and yes, even The Force Awakens. So we're just going to be kind of exploring, if we were to go back and watch the movies, how our perceptive of certain things might change, with new information that we have. So should be really interesting.
Yeah. Yes, it should. And that's what's coming next week. That'll do it for this week. For Faster and More Intense, I'm George Costel. That was Shiloh Camrath.
Yep. And also, if you want to email us, you can always do that at fasterandmoreintense@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Facebook/FasterandMoreIntense and on Twitter at FMI Podcasting.
All right. Thanks for listening, and remember, the Force will be with you.
Always.
Oh man, you stole my line. You bum.
Star Wars is the exclusive trademark of Lucasfilm Limited. All Star Wars names and sounds are the exclusive copyright of Lucasfilm or parent company. All content generated on this site is the exclusive intellectual property of Faster.